Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be here today to talk to you about some of the miracle stories that are happening right here in our own city, in our own state, every day. My name is Tony Cussack, and the title of our show is Tony's 50,000 Coincidence Miracles. Please note, this show is not about religion, and we're not trying to change anyone's religion, and we're not trying to get you to join any religion. It's just about miracle stories. I don't know of any religion on the planet that doesn't talk about miracles. That's why religions begin, because they have something that's telling them there's really a God. But we're not going to get into that. We're going to just talk about miracles and leave the decisions about all that up to you. So we don't care what religion you are. We just want to talk about miracles. If you are an atheist, I think you'll enjoy the program as well, although I can't guarantee you'll remain an atheist very long after you hear many convincing stories, coincidence kinds of stories about miracles. You can email me your own stories if you wish. We'll try to use all we can on the show. I can't guarantee we will, depending on volume and time, but you're welcome to send your stories on to us, and we will mention them when we can. You can send them to the following email address. But please notice that if we do use your story, we won't mention your name. We'll keep you anonymous. And we suggest that in your story, when you send it to us, don't use your correct name. That way anyone listening will not be able to figure out that it was you that sent the story in. The email address you can send your stories to is very easy to remember. It consists of 2 words and 3 numbers. The first word is Tony, spelled Tony, and the second word is and, spelled A-N-D, and the numbers are 777. So once again, the name is Tony and 777 at AOL.com. Well, let us begin. This is week number 31, and I'd like to start off by talking about a wonderful movie. So I would remind you to get a pencil and paper handy. You may want to jot some things down. The wonderful movie I want to tell you about is, it's called Serendipity, spelled Serendipity, Serendipity. And those of you who don't know, because I did not know what serendipity was, I looked it up. But serendipity is a situation when we see a lot of coincidences, we see a lot of things happening, and they seem to be patterned, like someone is pulling strings and making these things happen. So they call it serendipitous or serendipity. Well, there's a wonderful movie called Serendipity. John Cussack is the male character. It's a wonderful movie. It brings tears to your eyes and gives you a lot of joy. I highly recommend it. You can probably find it on YouTube, but if you Google the movie Serendipity, I would highly recommend listening to people of all ages, really. It's a wonderful movie. And what it does is it shows us that a lot of coincidences do happen in our life. I've had, as I tell everybody, 3 miracles a day minimum in my life. Sometimes I get 10 or 15, and wrote a book about it all. The title of the book is Tony's 50,000 Coincidence Miracles, and our radio show is called Tony's 50,000 Coincidence Miracles as well. Okay, so hopefully you got your pencil and paper and you can write down Serendipity, the movie. And the first miracle story I'd like to share with you is, recently I met a man. I pass out cards about our book and our radio show to people so they can learn what I've learned and learn what you're learning about how to experience coincidence miracles, how to become a friend of God. And so my mission in life is to have as many people as possible get a hold of these books and become friends of God and experience miracles every day, because that's what happens to friends of God. And it happens because you keep talking to God and asking Him what to do, and you keep trying to do what He's telling you to do, and that's what produces miracles. Moses is a good example. He tried to do what God said, and The Bible has a lot of miracles where Moses is involved. And the prophets are other good examples. They did what God said as well. Okay, so one particular day, I was passing out cards as God inspires me to do in a certain place, and I wind up bumping into a man who asks about the book. He asks about miracles. He asks about how can you become a friend of God. And I could simply tell him, get a copy of the book, but I was trying to be helpful, and I was inspired to answer his questions. And then it turned out he confided in me that he was very addicted to gambling. And it was a terrible addiction, and he spends on a terrible amount of money, and he does have a family, and it's a problem for many, many people. They get addicted. Gambling can be enjoyable, it can be fun. I even have a couple of episodes in my book talking about people playing cards. But the problem is you can become addicted to it. And he was. And so I gave him advice and told him about the book would certainly help him. And we said a prayer together. And then later that night, for some mysterious reason that really blew my mind, I got a phone call from a friend of mine who I talk to maybe once every month or two. They called me and they said, how you doing? How are things happening? What's going on in your life? And we shared a little bit of what's going on in each of our lives. And then as we were saying goodbye, they said, Tony, I want to tell you about a remarkable thing that happened to me today. I was in my prayer time and I was praying, and I was so saturated today and so impressed that I had to pray for people who have addictions to gambling. And right in the middle of my prayer time, I couldn't get it out of my mind. I had to stop what I was doing, Tony, and start to pray for people who are addicted to gambling. And then at the end of that, I said, well, I might as well pray for people addicted to drinking and pornography as well. So I wound up praying for all three. But I'm really, so wondrous, Tony, and I was just inspired to share this with you. And we had a nice chat, and we said goodbye. And so I'm sharing with you. This was a coincidence miracle par excellence. The person did not know that at the time they were led to pray for addiction, that was the time that I was talking to this person about addiction. It was within the same hour. So God was telling me now, because this friend of mine was led to call me, God was telling me that while I was ministering to this person addicted to gambling, my friend was praying for people with the addiction to gambling. So that's what I call a coincidence miracle par excellence, because God proved to me and showed me that he was in my life. He didn't have to have my friend call me. He didn't have to do that. But he did it to show me that, in fact, what I was doing earlier that day was indeed and is, in fact, his will. And that's why he had this friend of mine get this prompting to tell me so. And you might have those things happen in your life as well. And then the next thing that happened was, after I finished talking to that person and I'd gotten my supper together, I sat down by the television, I put the television on, and the channel was already on the Trinity Broadcasting Network, where there are a lot of Protestant ministers who give lectures and talks. And I just turned the TV on, and it was sitting on that channel, and lo and behold, who's talking but R.Morris, a Protestant evangelist. He's talking and giving a lecture, and as soon as the television goes on, he says, R.Morris, on this particular day, his lecture is about addictions to gambling and addictions to drinking, and he was talking all about how God loves us and we can be friends of God, but the devil is always trying to trip us up and give us addictions of all kinds of addictions. So when you find yourself addicted to something, you really need to turn to God and his friendship and do what he's telling you, and that's how he'll pull you out of the addiction. If you want to overcome addictions, your solution is become a friend of God and ask him what to do every day with all the things you're doing, and step by step by step, God will lead you away from the addiction, and sometimes he'll stop you instantaneously, like many, many people have addictions, and they'll say one prayer and become unaddicted. So I thought I'd share this wonderful experience with you on this particular day. a friend was praying at the time I was ministering to the person, and after they called me, I sit down for supper, and R.Morris is talking about the same thing as I coincidentally just happened to put the television on. I'm so happy to be able to share these coincidence stories with you because I was experiencing coincidence miracles in my life all alone, just me and God, and I didn't have anybody telling me that it's possible. I often wondered if I was losing my mind or if I was schizophrenic, and so I'm so happy to be able to tell you that if you're experiencing these things, you're not schizophrenic and you're not losing your mind. God really does talk to us and inspire us, and that's what the word inspired means. The next coincidence miracle I'd like to share with you is I was again at a boardwalk passing out cards one day, and I'm walking by a store, and I was inspired I saw a couple come out of a store. There were a lot of stores on the boardwalk, and I saw a couple coming out of the store, and I was inspired to go over and give them a card. So I'm walking over to give them a card, and they had not gotten out of the doorway yet. They were still coming out of the store, and so I had to wait a brief moment. So I waited, and they come out of the store, and the wife looks at the husband coming out of the store, and she says, and I could hear this very clearly, she says to her husband, "Well, that was certainly a coincidence inside the store, wasn't it?" And blew my mind, and I handed them a card, and I said, "Excuse me, but I have to tell you how amazed I was." And I told them exactly what happened. I was inspired to hand you this card. I wrote a book about Tony's 50,000 coincidence miracles, and you come walking out of the store and you're saying, "Well, that was a coincidence, was it?" It kind of blew my mind. So I don't know what kind of a coincidence miracle you call this, but God tells me to give them a card about coincidence miracles, and they're coming out of the store saying that was a coincidence. And oh, by the way, they were both very, very much aware of coincidence miracles in their life, and they also knew about the movie Serendipity as well. So I'm sharing a lot of things with you today, but bottom line, God is very much into producing coincidence miracles for all of us. The next coincidence miracle is the fact that when I got to this resort area for this day, God led me to go there to hand out the cards. When I got there, it was very difficult to find a parking place. The meter along the road was all filled. The parking lots were filled. So I asked God what to do. I drove around a little bit, and finally He inspired me to go to a certain place, and I would find a parking spot there. So I went where I was told, and sure enough, I drive into this very packed parking lot. The place is packed, and as I pull in, I see a car pulling out of their parking place. So I went over to that direction, and they pulled out, and their license plate number was 777. And at the end of the day, at the end of this particular day, when I was all done, ready to go home, I went back to that parking lot to get into my car. And as I walked over to my car and got in the car, I pulled out, and a car came into the parking lot looking for a parking place, and its license plate number was 777. I mean, the car coming in had 3 sevens on the license plate, and the car going out in the morning had 777 on its license plate. So I pulled out. They pulled into my place. I pulled my car over, got out of the car, and went over to these people and told them about the whole event, about me in the morning seeing 3 sevens pull out, and now I'm leaving and there are 3 sevens coming in. They didn't know what the license plate number meant, 3 sevens, so I explained the power of that number. I gave them a card about my book. We talked a little bit longer about coincidence miracles. It was truly a wonderful experience for me, seeing God on the way in and seeing God on the way out, showing me that He wanted me in that particular parking lot on that particular day. God bless you all. I will talk to you next week.